Stay quiet. And maybe you're thinking, am I lost? But what if I told you this isn't loss, it's a sacred rite of passage your soul has been preparing for a long time. Carl Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. This withdrawal you're feeling, it's not just a pause. It's the quiet song of a soul calling you home. When you no longer feel the urge to attract, to please, to fill the void with relationships, that's when your life energy starts to realign. You're not dying like society wants you to believe. You're beginning to live from within. In that still darkness, your shadow, the parts of you you once denied or hid in order to be loved, begins to emerge. You may feel lonely, confused, maybe even start to doubt yourself. But that's because you're stepping out of a system, one that measures a woman's worth by how desired she is. You're breaking away from identification. You're no longer a role, you're a soul waking up. The abstinence you're going through isn't just physical. It's a sacred protection of your life force, a way your soul shields you from what no longer aligns. This isn't avoidance of love. It's making space for a new kind of love, one that starts with you. This path isn't easy, but it's essential if you want to live from the self, that true center, where all your inner opposites unite, what Jung called the complexio oppositorum. And maybe your dreams have already started to speak. Strange symbols, vivid images, deep urges you can't explain. That's the voice of the unconscious, the ancient soul within trying to reach your awareness. You don't need someone to complete you. You're walking through the dark to meet yourself again, whole, full, and no longer waiting to be chosen. If you're in this phase, pulling back, going quiet, no longer feeling like you belong anywhere familiar, welcome. You're standing at the threshold of an archetypal transformation. Stay with this video. This isn't a lecture. It's a verbal ritual, a space where you can feel reflected, seen, not through someone else's eyes, but by your own light. Don't fear the silence. Don't rush back into your old roles. Let your body be still, and let your soul begin to speak. You think you're just avoiding intimacy, but what's really happening runs much deeper. When a woman stops directing her energy outward, stops trying to please, to allure, to be chosen, a deep psychological restructuring begins. You can't see it with the eyes. There are no drums, no rituals. But to the soul, this is an ancient rite carried in every woman's blood, the return to essence. Carl Jung wrote, "There is no awakening without a dark night of the soul." When you withdraw from old connections, your sexual, emotional, and spiritual energy doesn't disappear. It turns inward. It's like a river redirected. At first, it floods your inner world, but if you listen closely, it begins to nourish the forgotten landscapes within you. Your body isn't shutting down. It's pausing on the surface to reconfigure at the core. Desire hasn't vanished. It's being transmuted. You once thought you were the passionate lover, the devoted wife, the desirable girl, but those were personous masks you wore to survive in society. Worse than that, you didn't just wear the mask, you became it. Jung warned, when the ego identifies with the persona, we lose connection to the true inner self. Abstinence forces you to peel off that mask. At first, it feels chaotic. You don't know who you are. But only through unraveling the roles can you begin to meet your real self. When you slow down, repressed emotions rise to the surface. Loneliness, jealousy, fear of abandonment, a hunger for praise, all the things society taught you to hide. They're not signs of failure. They are your shadow, the parts you pushed outside your awareness. And with them come complex emotional knots left unresolved. No one told you part of you lives for being seen. Another part only feels lovable when touched. Another believes, if no one needs me, I don't exist. These are unconscious programs, most of them shaped in childhood. Abstinence doesn't create these feelings. It simply removes the cover and shows you they were always there. When your energy no longer leaks into superficial connections, your dreams begin to sharpen. This is no coincidence. Jung saw dreams as the language of the unconscious, the soul's way of speaking when your waking mind won't listen. You may see strange animals, symbols of disowned instincts, foggy, empty roads, your personal journey, water caves, temples, symbols of the feminine unconscious. Write them down. You don't need to rush to interpret. Just be present. They are calling you home to your sacred essence. Why is this path so lonely? Because you're not just walking away from relationships. You're dismantling an entire invisible system, Jung called the collective unconscious, where ancient archetypes of the ideal woman have been embedded in you since childhood. That archetype taught you to be pretty easy to love, never too much, to be gentle, but not too bold, attractive, but never demanding, to sacrifice quietly. When you stop living by that script, you don't just feel lost. You begin to awaken. Abstinence is not just a silence of the body. It's the sacred emptiness needed for a new self to be born. You may notice old relationships feel too tight. Old habits no longer satisfy. Deep inner callings are finding their voice. You don't need to rush. The cocoon is closing not as an ending, but as the birthplace of a new form of life. There comes a moment in a woman's journey when everything familiar feels foreign. The relationships that once made her feel safe now feel suffocating. The roles she once wore with pride, devoted lover, capable mother, interesting woman, suddenly feel like prisons. Not because she's changed, but because the mask has fallen. Carl Jung called this the encounter with the shadow, the dark part we've denied, avoided, or buried, yet has always quietly shaped us. You were praised for being nice, good, agreeable, but somewhere inside you, there's a part that doesn't want to be nice, doesn't want to be good, doesn't want to endure. That part is your shadow. Not evil, just real. It's everything authentic in you that you were taught to suppress in order to be loved. It might look like the rage that rises when you're dismissed, the craving to control, to compete, the deep desire to be completely free, unbound by anyone. In a society that rewards women for being chosen rather than choosing, your shadow is often painted over with a veneer called feminine virtue. But when you begin to slow down, to step out of the surface-level emotional whirlwinds, the shadow is no longer suppressed. It rises not to destroy you, but to help you become whole. The moment you stop living to be loved, you stop performing. And when the mask falls, there's a period of chaos. You are no longer anyone. You belong nowhere. This is when the persona, the social mask, begins to dissolve. Jung said, "The persona is that which we present to the world as if it were the whole of us. But it isn't you. It's the version of you built for survival. When that persona collapses, you might feel out of place with old friends, unable to engage in meaningless conversations, drained by fake connections. This is the ego's low tide, a place where no one defines who you are. And it is here in the unknown that the self, your true essence, begins to emerge. Society doesn't give you time to be no one. Social media tells you to shine and do something big. Family worries. Friends suggest you start dating again. But deep down, you know you don't need saving. You're crossing a sacred threshold where your soul sheds an old skin, even if that skin once served as armor. You begin to ask the questions you were never taught to ask. If no one needs me, do I still feel worthy? If no one loves me, can I still love myself? If I'm no longer attractive, am I still a woman? The answers don't come immediately, but only by walking through the darkness of unknowing do you touch the light of knowing. Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." When you embrace the shadow, you stop fearing anger, desire, selfishness, vulnerability, because you see they don't define you. They are simply life energy waiting to be integrated. When you can stand in your darkness without abandoning yourself, you become dangerous, not because you harm anyone, but because you're no longer controlled by the need to be accepted. You start to speak the truth instead of pleasing. Stop when the connection dies. Walk away without needing to explain. Choose yourself instead of begging to be chosen. That's when your energy becomes whole. And that's what terrifies the world, because it cannot manipulate a woman who has embraced her entire being. The silence outside becomes your inner voice. The distance becomes a doorway back to yourself. The not belonging becomes the clue you are leaving what was to enter what has never been named. You're not playing a role anymore. You're becoming yourself, one breath at a time. And when the shadow and the light in you are no longer enemies but companions, you don't just heal yourself. You begin to heal the feminine lineage, those before you who had to stay quiet, had to pretend. You are rewriting the script of your own life. After the darkness of the shadow, after the silence of the body, after the questions that had no answers, there comes a moment when a woman senses something strange. She no longer needs to be loved to feel alive. She no longer needs to be chosen to feel worthy. She is awakening. Not into a new version of herself, but into something ancient sacred that's always lived inside her, buried beneath layers. Carl Jung called this energy the anima, the feminine soul force within. When a woman reconnects with her anima, she becomes whole, no longer needing to be filled from the outside. In this age of logic, women are told to toughen up, be realistic, act rational. But there's a part of you that is gentle, instinctual, connected to nature and life itself. That is your original feminine, the part of your soul that doesn't belong to productivity, but to the rhythm of the moon, the cycles, the emotions, the intuition. When you withdraw from external noise, your intuition sharpens. Your dreams become clearer. Your decisions stop coming from fear and begin to flow from knowing. You're no longer looking for someone to complete you. You're choosing connection from a place of wholeness. When the anima is awakened, you stop feeling the need to explain yourself. You no longer attract lopsided relationships. You no longer perform to meet society's expectations. Because now, the wild woman rises. She is the symbol of untamed freedom. She isn't confined by hypocrisy or judgment. She doesn't need admiration. She only needs to be true to herself. Jung once said, "The completeness of the soul's life can only be achieved through the union of the conscious and the unconscious." The wild woman is the voice of the unconscious brought into the light knot to be tamed, but to dance with. And once you stop pouring your energy into unreturned love, you suddenly have energy to spare. You may want to rewrite your life. Start painting, dancing, singing, not to prove anything, but to free your soul. Feel the urge to travel fair or to go deep within. Jung believed that libido life energy isn't just sexual. It's primal creative energy. And when you stop wasting it on the fear of abandonment, it turns into light. There is a profound difference between a woman who is seeking herself and a woman who has found herself. The first lives like a beggar asking for attention, love, meaning. The second asks for nothing, but her presence gives something real. You can be alone without feeling lonely, love without clinging, give without draining yourself. You are no longer the vessel to be filled. You are the radiant center. When the original feminine rises, every action becomes a ritual. You don't act because you should. You act because it feels right to your soul. Silence becomes a language. Choice becomes an art. Your presence becomes a living prayer. This is what Jung called the manifestation of the self, when the soul no longer hides but is fully expressed in everyday life. After the dark night of the soul, after wrestling with the shadow, after the rise of the wild woman, a new kind of woman begins to emerge. Not new in the usual sense, but reborn from the core. A woman no longer marked by begging, no longer clinging to social labels. Jung called this the emergence of the self, the sacred center of the soul, beyond all roles, beyond all small desires. This is where one becomes fully oneself, not just in thought, but in every step, every way of being, every spoken word. She doesn't return as a victor from a battle. She returns as a firekeeper, walking lightly, steadily, with a gaze that is deep, but no longer grasping. She no longer needs to become. She is. Rebirth in Jungian psychology doesn't come from the outside. It arrives when a woman dares to walk through the layers society and the unconscious built within her and stands still in the nameless space where there is no map, no applause, no instructions. When she has nothing left to prove, her soul finally has space to radiate. In the past, she reacted to rejection, to judgment, to praise and criticism as if they defined her. But now her inner world is her source. She doesn't react. She creates not to be admired, but because her soul needs to express. She might launch a community project, write what no one dares to write, raise children not from fear, but from integrity, choose a relationship not from need, but because it reflects her light back to her. Creativity now is sacred, no longer a means to be validated. This woman is no longer easily controlled. Not because she is hard, but because she is soft, where softness matters, and she honors her sacred limits. She can say no without guilt. She can choose silence without needing to explain. She can step away without feeling like she's failed. Because every act now flows from a self no longer fragmented. Jung wrote, "When one is connected to the self, they no longer live for what others want, but to express the sacred within." The deepest freedom isn't about being unbound. It's about knowing what's truly worthy of your devotion. It's no longer about choosing who will love her. It's about choosing what kind of life to live in, what way, with what soul. She chooses love without bondage, work without hollow titles, community without judgment, a life that doesn't need to be justified. This is the fruit of individuation, when a woman is no longer split between social self and soul, but flows as one continuous current of truth. She doesn't need to claim the spotlight. She is the light not blinding, but just bright enough for anyone lost to find their way. She doesn't need to be believed, her presence alone inspires. And from this point on, the healing she once sought from the outside world has become complete within. Maybe if you're still here, it means some part of you has already been awakened. not by the words, but by something echoing within, as if you just heard your own voice calling to you in the dark. This isn't a video to watch and forget. It's a mirror for your soul, not to reflect your face, but to reveal the being behind your eyes. You don't need to understand everything that was said. You only need to ask yourself, why did this touch me? Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And if you've ever found yourself in the dark, then maybe your silence isn't a loss, but the beginning of real light. If you're on the journey back to yourself, let yourself know you don't have to walk it alone. Subscribing to this channel isn't about following content. It's about nurturing awareness within you through each word, each symbol, each moment of stillness. And if a thought, an image, or a single sentence in this video made you pause, leave a comment below. We don't just read, we listen. Because this is not just a space for messages, it's a space where souls can be seen and resonate together. You can return to your everyday life after this video, but don't return the same. Come back with a new awareness, a new question, a small new choice to live differently, even if it's just in how you breathe, how you feel, how you love. Because sometimes just one pause at the right moment is enough to let a soul be born again.